Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 10th. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are starting on time. It's a long meeting. This is the Plan and Zoning Committee meeting. If I can please have a moment of silent meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Manager. Can I please have roll call?
Yes. Councilperson Vimari Roman.
Present.
Councilperson Anders Urban.
Present.
Vice Mayor Omar Nickerson.
Here.
And Mayor Claudia Cubillos, Chair.
Here.
Chairperson Cubillos, you have a quorum.
And for the record, our Yanis Jacoby, our clerk, is out sick, so our manager will be helping us with whatever needs to transpire this evening. With that said, can I get a motion for approval of the agenda from the committee?
Motion to approve the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Nickerson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, our agenda for the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting on March 10th does pass. Has the committee had the opportunity to approve the minutes for our February 11th Planning and Zoning Committee meeting?
I have.
Is there a
Motion to
motion?
approve.
Councilperson Roman has motioned to adopt the minutes for February 11th Planning and Zoning Committee. Is there a second?
Second that motion, Madam Mayor.
A second by Vice Mayor Nickerson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, our minutes for the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting for February 11th will now be posted on the website. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much. Please bear with us this evening. We're going to go through every single item on the agenda. Every single item is incredibly important, so we want to be sure that everybody who's here that wants to be heard is heard. We're all going to ask everybody to just be mindful of time. If the presenters can stick to about 10 minutes to the presentation, and all those speaking, if they can please stick to 3 minutes. We don't have a timer per se, but we'll signal to you. So that everyone who's here has the opportunity to weigh in with whichever item agenda that we're going through. With that said, our first item is a Resiliency and Sustainability Task Force. This is a task force that I'm bringing forward to the committee. A couple of reasons why I'd like the committee to consider it. First and foremost, we had a resiliency town hall that was well received last year. And also last year, Miami and Miami Beach adopted a 305 resiliency, where all of the mayors from Miami-Dade County signed on an accord to work together to collaborate, share resources, and work better together as it relates to Miami-Dade County being more resilient. There were things with that accord that each mayor in each city agreed to be a part of. What happens in a city like El Portal, where we don't have a lot of staff, it makes it a little difficult for some of these things to come to fruition. As a result of that, and as a result of a colleague in another city forming a task force, and having a resolution, I read over it, and as I mentioned at the State of the Village, is something that I'd like the committee to adopt. It'll be a resident-based committee that the council can appoint on, and the resolution is attached. I would go ahead and like feedback from the council with regards to if they've had the opportunity to read the resolution, so that we can move this to full council to solidify more of the details as far as what this will look like and how will it take place. Again, it is a resident-based, so it'll be based on the council appointing anywhere from 3 to 5 committee members or task force members. I'm inclined to recommend probably 3 over 5. Sometimes when you have a smaller group, people are inclined to show up. If you have a larger group, then you can't get anything done until everybody is there. But that's why we're here to weigh in on this resolution that is attached. So with that said, I wanted to open it up to the committee if they have the opportunity to read the resolution.
Mayor? I did get a chance to read it, and I think it's fabulous. I like everything that was included in it. I guess my questions were only as to, this would go to council, And then from council, if it passes, how soon do we want to incorporate this?
If it passes committee and passes full council, then I would recommend we adopt it fully by a letter going out and open it up to the residents, or if the residents to apply by reaching out to one of us, because the council will appoint it. Or again, it could be a conversation that we have. I'm not tied into whether they email the manager or they email one of us. At the end of the day, the council will have to agree. If 5 people come up or 10 people come up, we will vote on the residents to be on there, and as the resolution states, is based on experience, based on what they've also done perhaps in the village as it relates to resiliency. I've had one resident who's relatively new in the community who I met at the new resident town hall back in October when I held one, who is an environmental attorney who's very interested in being a part of this committee. So with that said, and I'm sure each of us up here have a group of neighbors or friends or colleagues throughout the city and of the village of El Portal that is also inclined to have more knowledge or be aware or wants to be really involved as it relates to a resiliency and sustainability task force. Also in the resolution, it does state that we can also have one member that's not necessarily a resident. Maybe if we want to let the city of Miami know, the chief resiliency officer, to be an ad hoc member as well, so that they're aware of what we're doing, because she came to the resiliency town hall that we had back in July. So I'm open up for discussion. I more want to get feedback to ensure that the committee is on board with this, and then iron out the details at the full council once you all have had the opportunity to really take a look at the resolution. Unless, of course, you guys have done that and are ready to make recommendations today, then I'm open for that as well.
I have one-
Councilperson Urban. Uh-huh.
Sure. Is it go without stating that the chair of this task force would be a member of this council?
The resolution does not specify that. It actually says the chair and the vice chair would be selected among the people that are selected. So if it's 5 members, they would select among themselves who would be the chair or the vice chair. If we decide that we want a member of the council to be the chair, that's fine too. But I think that there should be an appointee from the planning and zoning, whether it's the chair or whether whoever the chair designates to be the liaison. But I really think it's an opportunity for the residents or community leaders to come together, and then they're really going to come back to report to the council any findings and things like that.
So then no consequence of decision or commitment of funds, for example, or resources, assets would be able to take place without going through full council?
Yeah, and the resolution is really specific where it says that.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
If
Very
the
good.
resolution says we commit to no funding, no assets, or anything like that. It is more of an opportunity for residents to come together who are knowledgeable and have the experience and really want to be a part of maybe putting together a resiliency task force plan for the village. And again, one of the reasons that I thought would be fantastic is we don't have all the staff that we'd like to have. And as much as this is so necessary, I don't think the manager or anybody else in our team has the time to put this together. But with the 305 resiliency the city of Miami Beach did, there are so many things that we can plug into. There's so many things that we can offer even to our residents that we're not maximizing or taking advantage of because there's just lack of time.
Then I would say that initially, I would recommend that as many people as wanted to be on that task force almost be allowed to be, so that you'd have the most number of voices possible. And then if it became problematic, for example, to have a quorum consistently at the meetings, that could be addressed in the future. But I would think initially you'd want as many voices at the table as possible, specifically for this outrageously important committee task force.
Okay, so if you look to page 4, section B, it's
Okay.
left blank for what we decide as a committee, how many members we would like to overall decide that it will, section A designates how many members we would like to see that board have. If you see section 4, the first sentence.
Yep, I'm there.
The task force shall consist of blank members appointed by the commission, including a member of the village council who shall serve as a liaison to the commission. Task force members shall serve without compensation. At least blank members shall be a resident of the village of El Portal. The membership as a whole shall reflect a broader range of opinion, experience, socioeconomic levels, races, ages, and expertise with the objective of implementing the plan. Members should have reputations for integrity and community service and have demonstrated an interest in a field or activity related to global warming, climate change. So my recommendation would be if you all are in favor of the resolution, in favor of the idea, we can pass it to full council. By the time we get to council, you all have already opined as far as where we're at, and then that we can decide at full council as far as, you know, it should be 7 members, it should be 6 members, and we can kind of have that conversation at the full council. Unless, of course, one of you have a specific one that you are, would like to see. My number was 5. I thought 5, there's 5 of us here and it works. And then, and also it would be good to see what even residents are interested. I mean, right now, I've only had one that's reached out to me. But again, this hasn't really been made public, so maybe once it's made public, there would be more that would be interested. Vice Mayor Nickerson, any comments? So do you all want to fill in the blanks this evening? Do you all want to go ahead and make a motion to perhaps pass the resolution and we can have that conversation at the full council?
I'm okay with moving this to the full council and then having that discussion as a full council.
Do you want to say something?
No, I was gonna.
I was going to look over to the attorney real quick. That would be fine if we did that as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm okay with moving this to the full council, just with the comment that in terms of 5, I would say at least 5 members shall be residents of El Portal, and then we could expand beyond that. But just as initial comment, but I'm
Yeah.
very comfortable moving this to the council.
And another recommendation to the committee is go ahead and read it, and if you have any recommendations, send it to the attorney. And then he will have that conversation with you. If anything, we'll go back and forth. That way, that conversation has been had before we get to the council. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the Resiliency and Sustainability Task Force to the full council?
A motion to adopt for the full council.
Motion's been adopted by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Councilperson Urbans. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, may I have roll call, Ms. Manager?
Point of clarification, is this open for public comment?
I can open it up for public comment. Would you like me to open up for public comment? Give me a minute, okay? No, I'll take public comment before I do roll call. You're more than welcome to come up. State your name and address for the record. 3 minutes.
The admin and finance.
Courtney Kurtz, 265 Northeast 87th Street. I was reading over this, and it is very unclear terms that are used. Commission, we don't have a village commission. It appears that the commission either refers to the council or commission refers to the task force, but commission should not be in this, so whoever writes it needs to review it and edit it, because it is very unclear in many cases, even the section you were talking about, including a member of the village commission, don't know what that is, serve as a liaison to the commission. So again, it's very unclear reading this, who's responsible.
So I'm going to preface it, and I apologize. There were a lot of little errors that I already sent to the attorney to change as far as wording, and commission was one of them. But at the same time, like I told the committee, this is also the chance for them to read it, and if there's something they'd like to add, delete, or make a recommendation, to please let the attorney know, and we can have the discussion at the full council. Thank you, Corin. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Manager, can I have roll call?
Absolutely. Councilperson Urbam,
Yes.
Councilperson Roman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson,
Yes.
Mayor Kubios.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, great, thank you. And this will go to the council, and again, reach out to the village attorney with recommendations and changes with regards to what you would like to see also included or not for discussion at the March council meeting. All righty, we're gonna move to F2. F2, we have a few special exceptions this evening. The first one is a recreational skate park at 533 Northeast 83rd Street, which is Zone 5 in our annexed area. I'm gonna ask not only the applicant to please come up on podium on my left, and then I'll ask for Juan from Placerbia to please address us with his staff report. And I'm also going to ask the attorney to read into the record what he's about to read.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Florida courts have determined that there are certain types of matters, including the following applications, which are to be treated differently than other issues considered by the Village Council. Most decisions of the council are legislative in nature, which means that the council is acting as a policymaking body. In contrast, in quasi-judicial matters, the council is applying existing rules and policies to a factual situation and is therefore acting like a judge or jury in a courtroom. In such cases, the courts have decided that due process and fundamental fairness requires that more formal procedures be followed. The Village of El Portal procedures for quasi-judicial hearings are as follows. Anyone who wishes to speak shall be collectively sworn in by the village clerk or the attorney. The hearing shall be conducted in an informal manner. I will read the title of the item to be considered. Village staff shall present a brief synopsis of the application and make a recommendation. Next, there will be a presentation by the applicant. The council will then hear from the participants in favor of and in opposition to the application. All witnesses are subject to cross-examination by the village staff, village council, and the applicant. A participant may request that the village council ask questions of the witnesses. The applicant and staff may make concluding remarks. No further presentation or testimony shall be permitted, and the public hearing shall be closed. All decisions of the council must be based on competent and substantial evidence presented at this hearing. All backup materials presented at the hearing will automatically become a part of the record of the hearing. All approval will be subject to staff recommended conditions unless otherwise stated in the motion for approval. I will now swear anyone wishing to testify. Anyone wishing to testify, please stand and raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth when asked a question? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Juan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the committee. This is an application requesting a site plan and special exception approval for a skate park to be built on the east side of the tracks. The applicant will make the presentation of the project. As a brief synopsis, this is a use that is permitted as an exception. The main highlights that we've been working with the applicant about are with regards to parking and how the building fronts the street, in part because the building is not a usual use, and it doesn't conform to the typical commercial frontage that one would typically expect in Z5. We've worked with the applicant, and we've come to a happy conclusion for this application, and we feel comfortable recommending approval for this application.
Thank you, Juan. State your name and address and company for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Jonathan Strauss. The company that I represent and we're moving in here is called The Deck Miami LLC. It's a subsidiary of Skateboard Supercross, which is our construction company that builds skate parks globally all over the world. I'm going to show you guys a quick video so you can see where we come from, what we do. And this that we're presenting in El Portal is kind of a first of its kind. It's a new concept that we think is going to revolutionize the way people see skateboarding and want to have community spaces around the world. Before I start, I want to let you guys know that our landlord, Mr. Don Bailey, is here, and he's in great support of the whole project. Our architect, Nick Jelpe, is also here, and he's known for pioneering really cool concepts in South Florida. So you can see the screen.
Can you all see it, or do you need me to turn off the lights? You're all fine?
Noise.
We don't have volume.
It's coming out of the computer right now.
Try changing the output device to
If I could figure it out.
Why does Adam have a wrinkle in his forehead? You look very nice. Wow. Because this is like every year, every month. I'm gonna cry.
Oh, there goes. So that's just basically, we're a league that we're connecting parks worldwide to be able to create racing and competition. How do I escape that? I don't know how to escape out.
Escape.
There's no escape button. Oh. Oh, there it goes. So now I'll show you where we started as a public park builder, and then we created our first private project in New York City, which was a great community space. It lasted for 5 years. It's since closed. And last year we opened one in Ningbo, China. So I'm going to show you the year in review as to what we do in terms of creating recreation and activation in parks. You don't want to be out there in the dangerous outbacks. Basically, what we want to do is bring that vibe and that feel to El Portal. It's been about 2.5 years that we're searching for a location here in Miami because it's where our company is from. We wanted to have something homegrown, something where everybody can enjoy around our communities and the community that I grew up in. I was born and raised in Miami, South Florida in Miami, and I went to Ransom Everglades, and I've come back and made South Florida my home. So it's extremely important to me. So I wanted to present to you guys the concept by SBSX is Skatebird here in El Portal, out of Don Bailey's land that's empty right behind Don Bailey Carpets, which has been a staple institution here for more than 60 years. So what we're all about is we design, we build, and we activate communities. It's shown all over the world, and in every community in the US, whenever you build a skate park, it automatically creates a growth and movement and families driven to the area. It's totally against the stigma that skateboarding has received in the past. We're creating a space. Why Miami? I told you guys, it's arguably the destination for fashion and lifestyle, and skateboarding is what instigated that in the 80s and 90s, and it's a lot of fashion and a lot of like the look and art and feel of what we see in Miami or what we see in the country has been influenced by skateboarding. So we want to bring that back, and then not to mention we've got the best weather in the entire world, so it lends itself for a great outdoor venue. And obviously here, El Portal, it's kind of the central venue for all of Miami, so it could become a great destination space for everybody to come and visit. We're gonna build a place that's all about community, hosting events for all the different demographics. I don't know if you guys noticed in the video, but we've got kids as young as 3 that learn to skate with us, and adults as old as 68 that have learned how to skate. So we're gonna create a space that everybody can coexist in. And the way we design is with for those of you that are believers in energy and in flow, we design with a particular flow to make sure that there's no contentious or no crashes or things like that, so that everyone can live and feel the vibe and feel the movement and the motion. We work with some former pro skaters and then artists in the local communities where we go, and we always like to put that touch in. I don't know if you guys noticed on the track at Ningbo, but it's got a lot of artwork. What we did is we created a whole community outing. We got a pretty famous artist, not to China, but a nice artist from the US that came to China, and we allowed all the students in this school campus where we built it, and all the students got involved with it, and they got to paint it, and so it was a great community gathering. It was a great thing to really inspire people to want to be a part of the facility. We've been working with Stefan Janowski, which everybody that doesn't skateboard, probably it's the only name that people know other than Tony Hawk's name in the skateboard world. He's the one that partnered with Nike to make the most successful selling shoe. He since has retired, and now he's an artist, and he's an aspiring artist, so he started to create skatable sculptures, so we're gonna empower that, and hopefully we can house one of his first skatable sculptures here in El Portal, within the design of the park. We create events not only for the community, but also pro-style events. Here's an event that we did in New York, and we did it for all 5 years. We would bring Nike SB, and they would bring their pro team, and then all the kids in the community got to come get autographs and then watch the pros ride and race to show them what's available. Not to mention that today, skateboarding is in the Olympics, so it's gonna drive a whole additional vibe for the community in that. Now it's another platform for kids to really experience an outlet to go higher education and then higher opportunities to leave Miami and travel and all of that stuff, which is in our plan. And then the coolest thing is we want to make it accessible to the family. So if kids are coming, we want their family members, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, what have you, to come and partake in the fun. So we want to create we're going to create a food and retail environment where the retail will be all pop-up type shows, limited run, skateboard apparel or boards or wheels or things like that kids will want to come and visit for, not just for the skateboarding, but for the cool factor. And then the food, obviously, when parents go to a public skate park, it's a lot of times very, I shouldn't say public skate park, because we're a public skate park, but like to just a greened out space. There's no shade, there's no food available, no water fountain sometimes, no bathroom sometimes. So that's the experience we want to create. We want to create something unmatched to any other public space for skateboarding. We've done several surveys in China alone. We have 2,000 students, so we're always testing and seeing what it does for kids. It really does improve their mental health. It really does do that. There was a study that Tony Hawk just published actually with the University of Southern California that proved it further. We had already been seeing this with the 2,000 students in China, though, where they have increased creativity, increased all these things. So there's a lot of benefits to it other than just a fun game. And here's a quick snapshot of what the facility will look like here. It'll have a pumpable space, which is an ever-flowing track in the back, outdoors, with nature, with all the trees that are existing there. And that way the kids can kind of navigate through the trees and that. It's also our racetrack where kids will be able to come get their time and then compare against themselves, against the rest of the community, and against other people around the world that have similar type parks. And then inside is what we call the Street Plaza, which is what Street League is the Olympic qualifier considers as the right kind of park. So it becomes like a training facility so that kids can actually get exposed to what they're doing around the world and how they're competing for the Olympics, with the food and all that surrounding it, so it can make for a nice event type venue. Here's the reason why we chose Skatebird. We obviously did our research around Miami, and we know that El Portal is a home for birds. The word skatebird or the word bird has been very related to the skateboard industry for years. The original skatebird himself is Tony Hawk, which he's the person that everybody knows in the industry. And so we thought it would only be fitting to the home El Portal call the space Skatebird, because it has so much related. It has meaning to where it first grew out of, and then it has meaning to the entire core community of skateboarding. Here's the kind of inspiration of the art that's going to go into the space. It's not final yet, but it's things that'll be attractive to family. It'll be really cool. These are kind of concepts that could go up on the walls of the structure that'll be put up. And there you can see it put all together. I could go more, but I'd rather let the community tell us that they love it or they love it.
Thank you for your time. I'm going to open it up to the community in a second. Does the committee have any questions for Jonathan? I might have had the opportunity to meet with you, and thank you for taking the time. I know some of the concerns we addressed, Juan has addressed them on the staff report, but I want to open it up to the committee. Councilperson Arbor?
I have one difficult question for you. The private venture in New York, 5 years. Would you speak to why it ended, or yeah, that's my short, succinct
Sure,
question.
it ended not because it was unsuccessful. It ended because it was a developer that needed density credits to have the space. So it was originally 3 years. We're very fortunate that we got 5 years out of it. Their delays in permits is what allowed us to stay. But unfortunately, there'll be a 60-story high-rise going up exactly where the park was.
My first guess was landlord. So in that same spirit, what kind of a agreement in terms of longevity would you have with the current owner of that property?
So we've been able to come to, and the Baileys have been amazing with the whole process, and they're super supportive and they want to see it successful. They haven't gone anywhere, but we have a 10-year agreement currently, and so we plan on being there a lot longer than New York.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I'm going to close the committee and open it up to the public. Any questions for either Juan or for the applicant? If so, state your name and address for the record.
Adam Old, 140 Northeast 86th Street. I'm wondering, you said it's a public private? How does that work?
So it's a privately funded park. There's no municipal dollars going to it at this time. It's a business. We are going to be creating a membership platform. There will be free and open opportunities for the community to use it. We're not going to turn community members away from coming to want to eat in the food spaces and all of that. But the goal of this is to make it an educational facility, mostly. So there's going to be a lot of skateboard education and all of that stuff that'll come into it.
So it would be like my kids would get a membership and then they could skate like sort of on a schedule or something like that?
It's always going to be available for skateboarding.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
And we'll be open a lot of hours.
Well, according to our ordinances, right, with noise? Okay. Just making sure.
Support. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam Old. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Anything else you want to add, Juan? I would close public comments, open it back to the committee. Any other comments you want to add?
Actually, I'd like to talk about exactly what you just mentioned, which is
Okay.
the hours of operation. That's something that's still pending with the applicant, but we hope to resolve that and bring a proper answer for the commission, for the council.
So if it were to pass this evening and go to the full council, what is the recommendation, just so you can put on the record? That they need to,
We need to figure out exactly what hours of operation they require and
well,
whether or
on
not.
his, it says sun up to 11 PM.
Up to 11 p.m. Now, there's a part which is commercial and another part which is what we consider the civic, which is the open space with a skate park. And whether or not both of them are open and close at the same time, or there's difference between the commercial and the skate park. But that's something that we can work out for the council between now and then. Everything else to us, honestly, from a planning perspective, we feel that the activation of the eastern side of El Portal is important. This is a very unique opportunity to have something, again, unique that is not that doesn't exist around here. So it's an attraction. It's an area that doesn't have any development. So this kind of thing is a catalyst for future development. So that's part of the reason why we're in support, and we've worked out with the applicant some issues that they had, but I think that it's a good application.
Okay. Just a couple of things for Jonathan. So if it were to pass this evening, this cannot go to the March council meeting. It won't make it in terms of, and this is for everybody for special exception. So it all based on time frame. There's a time period of notice that the clerk must do. So with that said, and I think one thing that you mentioned to the manager and I, and we met, was that you're in your time crunch. So I think if that's the case, you might want to mention it to the committee, because in the event that it does pass, the event that any of the special exceptions pass, it will be a special council meeting. It will not be the regular council meeting. And we generally do that anyway. We've done that with most and all special exceptions because we anticipate a larger audience, and we want to have just basically 1, 2, or 3 items just dedicated to that on the agenda. So it will not, if this were to pass, it's not on the March 24th or 25th council meeting. It'll have to be a special council meeting.
That would be great. Do I have to request it formally, or?
No. I'm just letting you know that. I'm just letting you know, because I think you mentioned to the manager and I that you had a time frame where you would like to hopefully have this done by the end of August. I think for the school year to open, in the event that hopefully to recruit, students and all that, which is understandable. So I'm telling you, that's information you might want to share to the committee.
Yeah,
I know
definitely.
you shared it to the manager and I.
We'd like the ideal time is to do it when school's running, because it becomes a great after-school activity for a lot of kids, and so we're lucky that we've gotten everything to this point. We'd like to be opening before September 1st.
Any other questions from the committee to either the applicant or to Juan? Councilperson Roman?
I just have a quick question. What is the anticipated time of building the project?
So everything is with prefabricated items and modular type construction. So it's pretty fast once it arrives. So once we get our permits, it's a 8 to 12 week time frame.
Anybody else in the committee? Vice Mayor Nickerson?
Just really quickly. I thought I saw something about 10 to 10. Was that the hours of operation that was planned for the education? I remember when I was going through it, I saw something about 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. They will operate 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Juan? seeing that. I saw 2 times, so I saw the 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then I saw sun up until 11 p.m.
It may have been a typo, but sun up to 11 p.m. would be the correct one.
Yeah, on the first, yeah, okay, so here we go. It says it right here, they will operate 7 days per week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. We're in the 3rd paragraph. Probably like four lines up, 4 sentences up. It says they will operate 7 days per week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. But then down on the the 5th paragraph, it says the plan of the project is to create a public active space from sunup to 11 p.m. daily.
And I believe that's probably why you say you need to solidify the hours. That was
Yeah.
part of the recommendation, that hours need to be solidified. Yeah.
I'm happy to ask the applicant here in front of everybody, but we just wanted to work it out before it goes to full council, that's all.
The most important thing, I will tell you, is whatever the recommendation is, and if ours is it must abide with whatever our ordinance says. That has to be solidified in writing to us when you go to the council. If that is the only thing pending, I think, in the staff recommendation.
What's the ordinance? What does the ordinance say of hours of operation?
So we can work with you between now and the council to have a proper answer, and, and in the meantime, the council can actually reach out to us if they have any recommendations that they want us to consider.
The committee, okay.
Committee, sorry.
With that said, anything else from the committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to pass the special exception for the recreational skate park? Oh, wait, I have one thing to say. You had up there Skatebird Miami. We discussed that. It's got to say Skatebird El Portal. Can't say Miami. It's got to say El Portal. Just want to say that. Okay. Is there a motion to adopt special exception recreational skate park 533 Northeast 83rd Street?
I'll make a motion to adopt the special exception for.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Urban. Is there a second?
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Second by Vice Mayor Nickerson. So there's a motion to adopt the special exception with the staff recommendations, revisions for the recreational skate park. Any discussion before I ask for roll call? Hearing none. Ms. Manager, can you get roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilperson Urban?
Yes.
Councilperson Roman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson?
Yes.
Mayor Kubios?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0.
Congratulations, Jonathan, and to et al. Welcome. And Mr. Don Bailey, thank you. I know they could not have done this without you, and we'd love to see you here. And so we believe that if you've been there that long, they're going to be with us even longer. So thank you for your support on that. I know. I
Fantastic.
recognized you when you walked in.
Fantastic.
Really nice to see you. And again, thank you for the support on the project. You're welcome. With that said, now we have special exception, the Cavista, which is also in the annexed area. This is the second time that they are presenting to us. If I could please have the applicant, I believe Ben Fernandez, their attorney, is coming forward. I know the proprietors, the Barrington brothers, are here. And then we'll have Juan provide us his staff recommendation. Again, thank you all. Good luck. Ben, if I can ask you to put that, we have that here as a committee. So if we can put it so that the audience can please see it. Okay.
Good evening, members of the board. Ben Fernandez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, on behalf of BH 495, Northeast 83rd Street LLC. I'm here tonight requesting site plan approval for the Cavista project. As you all know, the Cavista is a Tequesta name for Northern Village, and the idea here is to be compliant with your Z5 zoning transect, as well as the area, which is the annexed area and is an area that is beginning to experience new development on the City of Miami side. This is immediately abutting the City of Miami, and in an area that has, this particular property has been vacant for some time. So we're hoping to bring some activity to this area, bring people closer to Biscayne Boulevard and some of the neighborhood-serving uses, including the skate park that will now be located just down the street. I'm here tonight with Ken and with A.R. Barrington of B&B Development, as well as with Anna Trinchet of Modus Architects, our project architect, and our transportation consultant, Mr. Carl Peterson. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Alou, our manager, as well as staff, Mr. Moret and Camila, as well as Abal. Thank you very much for getting us on the agenda and working with us through this project. I know it's taken some time. We were before you in December for the approval of the development agreement, which was required in order to obtain the additional two-story benefit that's permitted under Z5. And we're here tonight under Section 1759 of the code requesting approval of the site plan. We think that this project is appropriate for the transect because it is surrounded by multifamily uses, and it is north of the to the north is the former trailer park area, Little Farm Trailer Park area, which we expect will be developed in the near future with mixed uses as well. From a design standpoint, this project is going to feature large sidewalks, larger than is required by virtue of the 3-foot additional easement that we're providing through the development agreement. The project is going to feature a good mix of uses. It's going to have live-work uses along the ground floor, 9 units there, 282 units total, a mixture of approximately 50% one-bedroom units, 30% two-bedroom, and the remainder 3-bedroom units. So we have all types of units, and 4,259 square feet of office space. The center of the project will feature a lushly landscaped courtyard of approximately 15,481 square feet, and a pool area, recreational pool area. The main entrance, the lobby, is going to be almost 2,000 square feet, so I think that that's a generous size lobby for this project. Again, the idea is to create a mixture of uses that will keep people in the area, walking along the area, eyes on the street, enhance pedestrian activity, et cetera. From a technical standpoint, I think we comply with the technical requirements of Section 1759, as your staff recommendation confirms. And from a performance standpoint, we're also, I think, compatible with the area. The mass of the building is not overly large. The floor area is below the maximum that is required at 315,551 square feet. The code would allow up to more than 400,000 square feet. Lot coverage for the project is 68%, where 80% would be permitted by code. The open space exceeds that required by the code at 28%, where 10% is required. And our parking is also slightly in excess of the code, with 355 spaces provided, where 297 would be required by the code. So the project complies in most every way with the code, except for one particular area, and that's something that wasn't by the applicant's design or intent, but because Fourth Avenue dead ends, it was desirable and we thought necessary to locate the ingress and egress driveways closer to the north end of the project so as to not impede the pedestrian activity near the intersection of 83rd and 4th Avenue. And in order to do that, we had to reduce the spacing between the two driveways that lead into the structured parking garage. So whereas your code typically requires a 60-foot separation, we're providing approximately 40, a little less than 40 feet. And it also depends on how you measure that, but I don't want to go into a technical discussion with Juan about that. We agree that the project would require a variance of this requirement in order to make the driveways work, and so we're asking for you to also recommend approval to the council of that variance request. Again, this was not self-imposed. The roadway currently dead ends, and it makes more sense to put these entrances further away from what is the principal entrance and corner of the property. From a transportation standpoint, we've provided an initial transportation study that discusses the generation rate of traffic as well as the cardinal distribution of the trips. And really what it boils down to, and you can have Mr. Peterson talk to you a little bit more about it, but essentially during the PM peak hours in the morning and in the afternoon, the area will experience about 1 car per minute in traffic impact. And today we believe that this is a relatively quiet street, given the fact that one of them is a dead-end street, and the other one really, you need a bridge. There's no bridge presently to take you across the little river. So we think that the traffic impacts are going to be compatible with the area. Of course, we expect that this area is also going to benefit from transit someday, given its proximity to the railroad corridor. So with that, I'll really close our statements and leave it open to questions that you may have. We ask that you support your staff recommendation. We believe that we comply with the requirements of Section 1759 for the site plan approval, as well as for the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Juan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Committee. This application is for a special exception which is triggered by any development that's more than 10,000 square feet. So there's no real exception other than this zoning condition that is triggered in order to be able to review these large applications. The only one, and I appreciate that Ben went through the whole zoning code, so I don't have to go through it again for you. The driveway issue is set in the code at 60 feet in order to provide enough room for a pedestrian to cross and have a safe area to wait in case there's a car coming in or out. We recommend approval of this variance, and this is the one variance that we recommend approval for, as long as signage is provided properly, potentially adding some mirrors so that cars moving, especially on the way out, on the egress, are able to see whether or not there's a pedestrian coming through. So some safety measures can be added to the project in order to make it safer. The other element that we also discussed with Ben and the applicant at length was the stoop. The architect provided a very interesting stoop, which is a long one, which is something that is a little atypical. And since then, I've directed my team to look into that to be able to apply it in other projects. The reason being is because it's a resilient method of increasing the height of the base building floor, the floor of the building. And given that El Portal is in a flood zone generally, it would be important to consider these kind of measures in the future for other applications. So that's another element of the project that we feel that came out quite well. All in all, this is a compliant building for the transect that we're looking at, and it's a good example of the way that a building should front the street. With that, I'll open up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Juan. While we've spoken in great detail, I just had one question with your approval with conditions. So what needs to be seen differently at the council meeting if this were to pass this evening that shows that they complied with your recommendation of approval with conditions?
None. We've worked with the applicant to meet all the conditions that we had. I mean, if anything, showing us how additional safety methods are being used for that ingress and egress of the parking garage. Everything else, including the parking, visitors parking that we've worked back and forth with the applicant, the frontages, We've worked with the applicant extensively during the last, I can't remember how many months. So we're quite comfortable with this application as is, which will also, part of the condition is to go together with a development agreement.
Yeah. I mean, I'm inclined to think that they're going to do whatever it takes to be safe, correct? So that means adding the mirrors, but either way, it should be somewhere that they're going to do that as well. That's the only thing.
Correct, and that's an extra measure of safety. In truth, 37 feet, which is the length of the island that is left between the two driveways, is sufficient enough for a pedestrian, a person with a stroller or a wheelchair, to have enough room to stop and look if there's a car coming in or out.
Any questions from the committee to Juan or the applicant?
I have a question.
Councilperson Urban.
I don't know if you'd be able to answer this or not. I know we discussed it a little bit at the last meeting, but do we know what the average asking will be on a monthly basis for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
I don't know if we've further discussed that.
Sure. I'll just get to. So I'll just reiterate the reason why I'm asking. In 2020, anybody who reads a paper understands the need, really truly a desperate need, specifically in Miami-Dade County for low-income housing. I know that this is not a low-income housing project. I'm not asking you to make it. And so understand that I'm really quite impressed with the project. Looks great. Seems like it's going to be phenomenal. Just the only two caveats that I would have had as an ideal outcome would have been not the 2 additional stories, but that's fine. You're allowed, all good. But I would encourage you, as you approach completion of this project, assuming it does go through, to genuinely, truly consider even the smallest percentage of units. 1 or 2 would make a difference to the area. It is a now critical sort of problem, and it is only worsening. There's no light at the end of that tunnel in terms of addressing low-income housing in Miami-Dade County. So I would say that you'd have an opportunity, even with, sincerely, 1, 2, 3 units, to make a difference in the community. So I had said that at the last meeting. I'll just reiterate it. I know that it's not going to, I'm not going to require that it's not possible for me or the committee to require that you would do that. I would just ask you to keep it in mind as a consideration. So
Thank you.
Councilperson Urban, one of the things that zoning can do is look into an affordable program, the same way that we are allowing the bonus up of 2 stories for open space. We could also consider another option for future applicants to look into that.
Sure.
In order to gain those last 2 stories, if directed by the council.
Sure. Okay. Then I would even encourage a bit of imagination. For example, sometimes the only barrier is being able to come up with, say, first and security, where maybe you have like a payment plan for the security to build that up. But I would encourage you. Imagination is always good in creativity. So, thanks.
Any other comment from the committee? Hearing none, before I make any comments, I'm going to open up to the public. If anybody in the public has any comments on this project, just please, for either the applicant or the Juan or us, please state your name and address for the record. So I'm open for public comments on this agenda item. All righty, hearing no public comments. Any other public comments from the committee? All righty, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the special exception for the Cavista?
I'll make a motion to adopt the special exception for the Cavista.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Urban. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. Again, any discussion? All right, hearing none. Ms. Manager, can I have roll call, please?
Councilperson Urban?
Yes.
Councilperson Roman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson?
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I smile because we've been talking for about 6 years, so, and Adam Old can attest to that. Probably 8. So welcome, and we're very excited, and don't let us down. I don't think you will. You guys have until this date. You guys have been great community partners, and thank you for everything. Good luck, and just, follow whatever the manager in the building department tells you, and we will see you at the council meeting. We'll let you know when that will be, okay? Again, as I mentioned to the other applicant, this will not make it for the March one. But again, whatever happens this evening, I think everybody's on a time frame. So as long as the committee agrees, I'm okay with doing a special council meeting, which all special exceptions, I believe, of this magnitude should go to a council meeting. I just want to make a comment to Councilperson Urban. When the manager and I met with Full View Capital for the Little Farm, we discussed in great length affordable housing. So I agree that you all should potentially, let's put something in place before that comes forward, because that's a project of a bigger magnitude. With that said, all righty, again, thank you all. Great seeing you guys. We look forward to seeing you guys very soon. All righty, F4, special exception, Cristo Rey, Miami High School, 205 Northeast 87th. If I could please have the applicant come to the podium, and Juan is already at the other podium. I'm going to make the same recommendation to you all. Just make sure that all that faces the audience, because we have the design plans with us. Whenever you all are ready.
Should we wait for quorum? Should we wait for quorum?
Well, technically, we have quorum, but where did Councilperson Roman go? And the manager?
Start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, committee. This is an application for a site plan and special exception approval for an educational use of a high school within an existing structure. Based on Article 3, it requires a special approval for the use of an educational facility within Z4. Since the town halls, and we've had several meetings with the applicant has presented to the stakeholders. We have expanded on our report to include more information about the charrette and about certain questions that the applicant had. You have the staff report with you. We feel confident that this application meets the criteria, the zoning criteria, other than the use, and the use is what is in question today in front of you. Everything else, the applicant has modified, improved, based on your comments and our comments and the stakeholders' comments. So that's the reason why it's in front of you today. I'll let the applicant present, make the presentation, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, council members. It's a pleasure to be here before you again. I thank you for this opportunity. This is the second half of the meeting that we started on February 11th.
Yes.
And it's our second council meeting, and we've had one town hall. Many of you were at the town hall. So I'm not sure I want to go bore everybody with everything again, but for those people who may have not been here, I can give a brief summary of the school. I know you want to say something, please.
Yeah, yes, definitely do a nice brief executive summary, but state your name and where you're from and address for the record.
Will do. My name is Rudy Checky, 14627 Southwest 63rd Court, Miami, Florida. I'm the board chair of Cristo Rey Miami High School. I'll give you a short description of the school since I think most of you have heard it before. We will be the 38th school in the Cristo Rey network. It's a network that was founded in 1997. It is unique because our high school students not only go to extended classes 4 days a week, but they also work 1 day a week. They work for law firms, accounting firms, they work in offices, and they actually get paid for that work. The pay goes directly to the school, and it pays for approximately 50% of the cost of their education. So the students have what's called skin in the game. But more importantly, they get practical work experience. They get to work with professionals. They get to see what it's like in the workforce. We totally train them to go to the workforce. They learn office systems. They learn how to answer phones. They learn how to shake hands. They learn how to look you in the eye, tie ties, dress properly, and behave properly. Our school is a Catholic school. 40% of our students are non-Catholic. We went over that at the town hall meeting. I'm happy to do it again later on. We have graduated so far 18,000 students. 100% of our graduates are accepted to college, and they graduate college at 3 times the rate of their peer group. So we are a successful and proven entity, and we would like to be your neighbors. As I mentioned to you the first time I met you, we want to be your community partners, and we want to be an addition, a great addition to the village of El Portal. Let me address some of the issues that have come up various times since we started this a few months ago. Everything that I mentioned to you now, every action item will be part of the development agreement that is currently being drafted with your council and with our council. So if it's an action item, it's going to be part of the agreement. So let's talk about some of the things that were of concern to you, because as I said originally, what's of concern to you is of concern to us. What's of concern to the village is our concern. We want to be here. So one of the things that came up initially were taxes. We are a not-for-profit entity. Granted, we are a not-for-profit entity. However, that doesn't mean that we won't pay taxes. We have something that's called a pilot program that's available to us, payment in lieu of taxes. We have met with your CFO. Your CFO indicates that at the highest and best use for this property would pay a tax bill to the village of El Portal of $41,500. We plan to pay $41,500. We'll need 4 years to get there. We'll start out at the level that it is currently being paid. Each year we'll increase it so that by the fourth year, by the fourth year, we'll be up to the $41,500 target. So with respect to taxes, like I said before, we want to be part of this community, and we don't feel like we can be part of this community unless we can contribute our fair share to the community. So taxes are something that we're more than willing to agree to. Access for El Portal students. This was an important message that we received from the residents. The initial thought was, well, this doesn't do anything for El Portal students because the El Portal students wouldn't qualify economically. Well, in fact, a certain amount of students will qualify economically. The cutoff for a family of 4 is $68,000. But to the extent that they do not qualify because they earn too much money, we have allocated 10% of our enrollment class for each and every year, 10% to El Portal students. So with respect to those students, they will be given priority enrollment, and they will be treated just like any other student. They will participate in the corporate work study program, but they will be responsible for the balance of the tuition, and it is a lot less than it would cost at any private school. One of the most important things to the village was the preservation of the existing structure. And it's easy to understand. It's sad to see it in the state that it exists today. It's a architecturally beautiful structure. We will preserve that structure. We will not change the structure. We will paint it. We will put new doors and new windows. We'll do roof repairs. And the exterior of that building will look better than it did on the first day it was built. We will also be gutting the interior to make it suitable for our classrooms and our meeting areas. We will also be landscaping the area. No trees will be cut. That was an issue that was raised with us. We get it. No trees will be cut. No trees will be moved. And we will actually add trees and we'll add landscaping and we will improve the overall look of the property. We are also constructing a sanctuary garden, and that garden will be on the adjoining property of the Hectors and the school. It will be a beautiful landscape garden. We will separate it by a fence, which will be approved by the Hectors. That garden will be dedicated to not only our students, but to the community use. We have to just be very careful that we treat the garden appropriately. We don't want to open it to the public because we're afraid of what might occur in that garden if it was publicly available to everyone. So our plan is to open it to the village residents upon request. We only ask that you preserve the garden as if it were your own, and I'm sure people in this village will do that. We have a limitation on student population. Our population will grow at the rate of maximum rate of 100 students per year. We will get to that rate over 4 years. Our first year will be freshmen, no more than 100 students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So at the end of the day, we have a maximum of 400 students. And based on the corporate work study program, which I described, only 75% of those students will be on campus at any time because the other 25% will be getting an education while they're in the workforce. Traffic is a big concern, and it will be monitored by Cristo Rey staff or off-duty El Portal police or Dade County off-duty police if El Portal police are not available. It will be monitored during all arrival and departure times of students. And that was a big issue, and we can discuss that a little bit more with respect to the pattern after a while. Our school will not discriminate with respect to religion. As I mentioned before, 40% of our students are not Catholic, and we will not discriminate based on race, gender, sexual orientation, or anything else. We have a strict non-discrimination policy, and that policy will be followed. We are a private school, and as a private school, we have zero tolerance for any indiscretions. Any indiscretions with respect to fighting, drinking, drugs, or anything that disrupts your peace and quiet and creates a nuisance. We have contracts with our students, and we have contracts with our parents. And as a private school, we are entitled to enforce those rules. So the other thing that we really enjoyed was what are we going to do for you? What will we do for the benefits of El Portal? So I'm going to name a few things, but we are totally open to your suggestions. We have been from the very start. So here's a few things that we thought about, and please let us know if there's other things we can do. The building will be available to the village for meetings and events. So with some notice, we're happy to open up the sanctuary area for your meetings or things that you might want to do there. We do plan on having adult education classes with respect to financial literacy and other subjects that might be of interest to you. As I mentioned, the sanctuary garden will be open to village residents only upon request. We would really like to have an interaction between our students and the community. Something that I didn't mention before, and I beat myself up for it, was the fact that our students are required to provide hours of community service. In speaking with a family here tonight, they came up with what I think is a great idea. There's elderly people in this community. I think our kids can benefit those folks, and I think those folks can benefit our kids. It would be great to have those folks as mentors for our students, and for our students to be able to bring them value in their lives at an elderly age. So anything else you can suggest, we're happy to entertain. Nights and weekends, we're not here. So you guys can do whatever you want, but we're not going to be making any noise on nights and weekends. The interaction we've had so far has been really quite good, and I think it's been very beneficial for us to hear the comments of the village residents. You've given us an opportunity to deal with them, and I think we've dealt with them openly and honestly and in the best method that we possibly can. And we don't expect that to stop here. This is not a date. This is a marriage, and we are here for the long haul. So we want to make sure those lines of communication are open. If you have issues, let us know. We'll address them, and hopefully we'll resolve them as best as anyone could want. With that, Council, I'm finished my comments, and I'm happy to entertain questions or step aside.
Thank you, Rudy. Now we're going to hear from Juan with the staff recommendation, and then we'll go back to questions.
Based on the current application, we recommend approval of this application. We feel that Second Avenue is in need of a catalyst. We understand that Second Avenue was envisioned as a mixed-use, 3-story Main Street. But in our findings, further study of the Charette report, we found 2 exhibits that show El Portal footprint as it was. Unfortunately, I wasn't, our team wasn't there during the charrette, so I don't know what discussion ensued. But in knowing how these sort of projects happen, and in knowing how the retrofit of some towns happen, I'll repeat myself from the town hall. It is difficult to get municipal or civic buildings back into a town because they don't pay, because developers don't build them. So we do have a unique building that creates a sense of arrival, that has the potential of becoming a use other than commercial. So it's a respite from the rest of the Main Street. It breaks it up specifically in the center, and it leaves an open space, a green space in the core of the village. In addition to that, I'd be remiss not to mention Z4 allows 60% lot coverage. A 3-story, 60% lot coverage on a site like this would definitely change the core of the village, which right now, as I said, that front yard in front of the church, it's green. It's exactly what the comprehensive plan calls for, which is respect for the trees, the greenery, nature, setbacks, etc. So in our opinion, this building is not only at the core, but it is the identity of El Portal. When somebody drives through, that building is what tells them that they are in El Portal. We would recommend not to, we would recommend that this application not be denied for the simple fact that other developers may come in and tear it down and build something that would totally change the character of that Second Avenue. Potentially against what the images that we've been looking at the charrette portrayed.
Thank you, Juan. Before I open it up to the committee, I wanted a couple of things. I wanted to first say thank you, Rudy, and thank you, Juan. I'm going to ask the committee to let's let the public speak first, and then we will opine thereafter. So with that said, I'm going to close the committee and open up to public comments. Again, just come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, for him.
Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th Street. I've had a number of concerns with this project that the Cristo Rey team has addressed, quite honestly, to the best of their ability. I've been very defensive about this because it is right in our neighborhood. It is a huge impact to the village. So in prior meetings, I have been opposed to this. I have been vocal about it. And in talking to a number of other residents, the question was, if not this, then what? And going down the other approaches, whether it stays vacant, whether it becomes the maximum and best use as residential, maximum and best use as commercial or mixed use, this is the least impact to the residents, the least negative impact to the residents. The team at Cristo Rey has been changing some of their designs based on our concerns. They have addressed some of the traffic. It will not go away. There still will be traffic issues, but would we be better off if there were 200 units there and people were all driving off to work when it's even worse than their 7:30 intended start time? So to me, this is the best solution that can happen here. I'm still not thrilled with it. I don't think anybody's thrilled with having a school right in the neighborhood that is not a true community school. Having said that, I still have a few concerns. The agreement, I don't know whether the agreement should be coming here, because if it's going straight to council, I don't believe there's enough time for residents to review that agreement and make sure that it addresses all the concerns. I was hoping to be able to see it here so we could address any changes here at the committee before it went to the full council. Couple of things that Rudy did not mention, which I'm hoping will make it to the agreement. After hitting the 41.5 target, it should continue to increase at some nominal rate, 3 to 5% a year for their pilot program going forward. We need to make sure that it is in the agreement that it won't be rented out for private use or private functions, because obviously that would make it very difficult for neighbors and surrounding folks to enjoy in the nights and weekends. And then, I don't know how we put this into an agreement, but some sort of statement that this is not changing the use of the property for any other entity other than this one. And the reason why is we've had, as an example, the prior applicant, the sanctuary, come through, and now it's kind of like a bait and switch with that prior agreement. And I would hate to think that, although they seem very well-intentioned, just to protect ourselves, that they come in, they get the approval, and then, hey, you know what, we're going to slap it over to a charter school. And so I would want the village to be protected. I'm not saying you are, but we've been burned before, and I don't want to get burned again. So the fencing, I've made known as a concern, and I believe you will continue to do the best you can and make sure it adequately maintains a nice sidewalk for people walking by, et cetera. But to the council, honestly, to the committee, honestly, I can't think of a better alternative that's realistic. Still don't love it, but I can't think of a better alternative that's realistic. So, thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Anybody else? State your name and address for the record, please.
Jody Hector, 260 Northeast 88th Street. What I hope to be the future neighbor of Cristo Rey. I was and continue to be very impressed by your thoughts and ideas. Although my children are grown and now I have small grandchildren, I realize that you could be educating a future mayor of El Portal. We don't know. I had mentioned to you, and this came up with the previous or the existing owner now of the property, that I would like a covenant that the residential lot that is now there, although it's part of a unity of title, that it should stay as green space. And that's not even because I don't believe you would keep it that way, but we don't know what will happen down the road. So down the road, if by some chance Cristo Rey moved out and you were selling it, again, I would want to make sure that that does stay as green space, because I feel that it acts as a natural buffer between a school and the actual residences. And having said all of that, I'm wishing you a lot of luck with this, and I really do hope that we see you as neighbors, and I'm 100% in favor of it.
I just want to thank her for those comments, and the green space issue will be dealt with in the development agreement.
Any other public comments? State your name and address for the record.
Nancy Dawson, 315 Northeast 89th Street. Going to the question of what's Plan B if all of the things that are hopeful and fabulous don't turn out that way. If the traffic requires that El Portal Village hire more police, or if there's more police required, what kind of financial burden is going to fall on the village that maybe should be negotiated ahead of time? That if there's something that doesn't work out, you know, because when you suggested that we're not dating, that we're in a marriage, everything at the beginning is amazing.
The honeymoon.
And the promises flow freely. And so what I'm saying is that if everything doesn't turn out and we have 400 people, you know, to your success, you've got 400 students piled onto one corner, and I envisioned buses backed up and people coming in and people and foot traffic saying, well, let's just not drop them off at the school. Let's drop them off 3 blocks in and the kids can just walk 3 blocks. And then you've got foot traffic and bus traffic, and you've got all sorts of things going on, and people walking in people's yards, and whoever knows whatever happens. I'm saying that at some point I think the El Portal Village will take care of it, but it will cost the residents. And I think we're tapped out on taxes, unless you're not paying the taxes that I am. We're pretty tapped out on taxes, and the only way to maybe offset this is to make sure that the new resident would cover anything that would be additional cost to us.
Thank you, Nancy.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Agustin Barrera, 5030 Southwest 65th Avenue, South Miami, Florida. As we stated in our town hall and stated here is, we will be contracting with an El Portal off-duty police officer. We have a plan that we're going to staff. The plan is here, where you see the yellows, where we're going to have staff members. We're open to having multiple drop-off sessions. So this is going to be, there was a conversation, maybe we submit the plan for the record and this is the plan. No, the plan has to be fluid. It has to be able to change as we evolve and see how it works. With regards to a parent dropping off a student 3 blocks away, if they do that, we want to know, because we have the ability then of correcting that, because they have a contract with us. It's not a public school, this is a private school. So parents will have a contract that says either they drop the child off at the school's going to come on a bus, on a public bus, or they're going to come on the small vans. You keep thinking big yellow buses. We're going to have like these 12-passenger Sprinter vans that we're going to use to distribute some students to areas where they can't easily get to on a regular transportation. So the idea is the plan's going to be fluid. We're going to work with the residents. They're going to come in off 88th Street onto 87th Street. If we see an issue on 87th Street backing up, we're going to allow for the cars to then turn and go back and go out on 88th Street so that we don't create that blockage. One of the things that, and it was referred to by Curtis, our real impact to you is going to be in the morning. Our departure, we're not at the peak hour of commercial. On the weekends, we're not here. We're not here at night. So really is working with the residents and the village to make sure that the drop-off can run as smoothly as possible. That's really the challenge. And we're committed to working with you all to make sure it works appropriately. If there's any additional officers required to service this more during the day, we will pay for it. That's our commitment. We're not going to be a tax burden to the residents.
Any other public comments?
Good evening, Ken Hector, 260 Northeast 88th Street. I have a question, first of all, about 88th Street. Is there any consideration of speed bumps or making that a one-way somehow?
we don't have control over making it one way, and I know, and I talked to John Kim about it. I think as a high school, we're not required to have flashers, but I do propose that we put, like they have in public high schools, that we put signage for during the morning and afternoon during drop-off and pickup, speed zone, so that it slows down traffic on 2nd Avenue, it'll slow down traffic on 87th and on 88th Street. So we can provide signage, but we're not required. With regard to speed bump, like we've always said, we're willing to be a partner with you and go and meet with the county, if that's who we have to meet with, to request that, because now that we're gonna have a school here, I think it benefits all of us if we have more control of speed around the school.
Okay, thank you. Comment. I moved here to El Portal about 21 years ago in 1999. And in 1999, I would say that your school could be a community school here. The demographics were quite different in 1999 as there are now. And I do appreciate that, that we have the opportunity to have your school in our area, and that maybe some of the students that can go to it will have the opportunity. My stepson grew up here, and he did not have an opportunity to go to a private school for high school, and it was such a problem for him to go to high school in this community of this part of Dade County. So I do appreciate that. As far as the sanctuary is concerned, that's been empty for 16 years now. We've heard a lot of people saying they're going to put a lot of things there. Nothing ever comes of it. The only thing that's come of it is vagrants, people with drug problems, alcohol bottles. Just last week, 11 o'clock in the morning, walking my dog, a man was urinating in the front on 2nd Avenue. I'm sure the people of El Portal don't want cars going by our community saying, this is El Portal, a vagrant peeing on a major thoroughfare. So I just want to say that I'm 100% for the school, 100% for the use of that building, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Any other public comments? Looking at Adam Old, he's shaking his head no. Okay. With that said, I'm going to close public comments. So I want to add a couple of things before I open it up to the committee. Courtney, the manager and I met with the whole group, and in one of my meetings with them, I said exactly what you said. I said, you know, a lot has been promised to me as the mayor. I moved Earth and Water to help the sanctuary move forward and set the meetings and get the ball rolling, and only for this to happen, and not that this is bad. But I say this to say that as I looked at all of them, there's about 7 of them. When they come to meeting, they come well equipped. And I'm like, I looked at each and every single one of them, and are you all really going to happen? Because I'm willing to, work with the committee and work with the council and work with the community. But how serious of an applicant are you? We don't want you to just come in and then resell it or be in the same predicament. In 2018, the proprietors then were all excited, and we were very excited. And it's a high and low. It gets emotional, and that's why the residents are passionate and emotional. So. It makes me very excited to see that the residents have had the opportunity to reach out to you guys, but more importantly, that you all have been so candid and receptive to all of the comments that they have made. I think that only speaks volumes, as long as we get it in writing. So I'm going to say that I might put you on the spot a little bit here. Yes, we just received the development agreement, and they will go hand in hand. You'll have the opportunity. We'll discuss when we're going to bring it forward. You'll have the opportunity to review it, the whole committee, everybody. But so I had a meeting with, because I know public safety comes up, because public safety, along with development, along with all that we do, public safety is right there. It is our largest budget. We are not a great village without our police officers. So I know there was a conversation that we had not so long ago with you and Ana Maria, and I don't know if that's something that's going to be incorporated in the development agreement, but we discussed that you all would hire 1 police officer from the village of El Portal. And so I haven't heard that this evening, and I didn't see it in the development agreement. But I want to know, because we discussed about hiring off-duty and all that, but hiring off-duty, there's no commitment that is going to be one of our own, men or women, because as they already have schedules set. But if we can add one more police officer on, that is the Village of El Portal, and that part of the agreement is that you pay for that full salary. So I wanted to
So
just
we-
ask if that's still on the table.
Yeah, we are gonna require to have a public safety officer on site during the hours of operation. Okay, so that is a requirement. But we're not open 365 days a year. I mean, I think budget-wise, we just have to go back and confirm that we can afford to pay the salary so that the officer is available then during the rest of the time to the village for whatever issues you have, okay?
So we need to just work out, because I know when we had that conversation at the meeting,
Yeah.
we didn't iron out all the details. It was just brought up, and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, but then it was, I didn't see it in the agreement.
Yeah,
So-
so we'll make it part of the development agreement,
Okay.
okay?
We just have to figure out, so it's a win-win for the department, for the city, and for you all.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay?
So with that said, I want to open up to the committee for any questions. Vice Mayor Nickerson?
Thank you, Councilperson Roth. Thank you, Madam Mayor. How you guys doing? Thank you for being here tonight. It's good to see everybody else here tonight. Something like this is really difficult, right? Because so on one hand, you have in your mind, being a resident of this village, what is the pristine idea of what you want. Right? On the other hand, you have to deal with the reality of what is legal, the legality of things. And so I just want to let everybody know out there, everybody watching this, everybody sitting out there, that at first, when this all first came to us, and we were kind of like open-minded about it, pretty much everybody thought that we were betraying El Portal by being open-minded. But I just want everybody to understand that it's different when you're sitting up here, and not saying that sitting up here is better than sitting out there or whatever it is, but it's different when you're sitting up here and you have all these different details in front of you of what we have to deal with. And all that I just said, basically what I'm saying, you guys, is this. If we were to say automatically no to this situation right here, and then if somebody else was to come in here and do what they perfectly have the right of doing, and not keeping any trees or building the sanctuary garden or not doing any of that stuff and just saying, you know what, we're coming in here, we legally can, we're gonna build what we want to, and to HELL with everybody else. Then if that were to happen, everybody would be coming in here like, how'd you guys let that happen? When people bring us things, we're trying to do the best we can to balance that of preserving El Portal for what it is, so that, and me and Councilperson Roman were talking about this meeting a few meetings ago, that my hope is that 100 years from now, that when people drive through El Portal, they see buildings like the sanctuary that doesn't look like the rest of Miami. Because the rest of Miami will be all modern-looking buildings and things like that. My hope is that 100 years from now, when they come through here, they're like, man, you know what? Places like this don't exist anymore. My good friend Courtney Kirk is from the Northeast. There's little towns in the Northeast of the United States where you drive through and it looks like it's kept from like the Civil War era. It looks like it's kept from like the Revolutionary War era. And you're like, man, isn't this beautiful? So you guys, we're trying to do the best we can with trying to maintain what El Portal is, but also trying to take abandoned buildings and make them as beautiful as can be for today. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Nickerson. Any other comments from the committee?
Madam Mayor?
Mhm.
I'd just like to thank the Cristo Rey for working with the community and really listening to the concerns. And I look forward to you being great partners.
Councilperson Urban?
Thank you for being responsive and diligent in your efforts. I want to ask, this might be for Juan, the manager, mayor, and yourselves. What is the practicality of having a nailed down development plan for review that the residents would be able to see, or assuming this would pass tonight? By the time we discuss this matter again, at that point would be for finality. How will we be able to have a plan that the residents will be able to view in terms of the agreement? So for example, for me, one of my initial concerns was I've always been frustrated that that property was not secured for village use. And then I initially did not see this project as anywhere near ideal for the village. And one of the points of contention, and then one of the points of opportunity that moved me from 100% saying absolutely not to 51-49. So some days for, some days against. Was the opportunity for a legitimate agreement that we could have civic use, opportunities where the village could have civic use of that property. And so without getting into the weeds of all the details of what we've already gone over at 3 different meetings and then here tonight, what does that look like in terms of visibility for the residents to see that ahead of the next meeting?
Right. We've received the first draft the end of last week and made some comments, but in terms of review, it requires 2 readings. So because of we're traveling under the state statute, so there'll be a first reading, a review which everyone will have an opportunity to review, and then a second reading. But if the council also wants to have a special meeting to consider it, that's also something that the council can also consider doing.
So assuming this would pass tonight, the first reading would be, in theory, at the next special meeting for basically the 3 variances discussed tonight. Would that be right?
It will be ready by the next meeting that's set. So
Okay.
that you all can consider the next meeting as the first reading of the item, or you can have the request or the requirement that it goes to this committee first for consideration before going to the first reading.
Okay.
Which is what's been done in the past before.
All right. I'll tell you that walking in tonight, I'm undecided. So we'll see how this goes. At least for I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the entire committee at all. But I can tell you candidly that walking in the door tonight is still undecided. I will say that the 2 residents, specifically from 88th Street, just as I weigh heavily Juan's opinion, because of his expertise, I weigh heavily the opinions of folks from 88th Street specifically, because they'll be, in my opinion, the most directly impacted by this. I would throw one more wrench in the system, Juan and gentlemen. I was looking through the plans and in the parking lot, lighting, and I'm sure the manager's going to wince as I say this repeatedly all the time about lighting. But if you would not be there nights and weekends, I would be hopeful that not just the lighting in the parking lot, but certainly throughout the entire property, would be more to a subdued, subtle, even elegant nature, as opposed to daylight, prison-like lighting. And as I look at the plans specifically with that parking lot, and realize that typically the parking lot will not be utilized at all at nights or weekends, I would ask you sincerely to take a look at those in terms of plans. Again, one, not to throw another wrench in the system, which has had many wrenches thrown at it. But why not, right? And so this is the time to have that discussion. So, I will say that it is clear that you have genuine intentions of being good neighbors just by the fact that you have clearly taken to heart the comments that have come from the village. And so, having said that, at this point, I would just want to know what that looks like. And it seems I got that answer from the attorney in terms of an ability to see truly what are we talking about in terms of in writing the agreements of compromise between ourselves and the developers.
If I may address
Sure,
the
please.
question about lighting, I think it's a very good recommendation. In fact, if this committee and council approves this application on the grounds of these being an iconic building, I would expect that the applicant would light the building at night and make it an icon.
Sure.
So landscape
But
and
not to the-
lighting and
right.
Right. I mean,
Right.
from a safety perspective, you have to anyway.
Absolutely.
But also from an artistic perspective, given again the fact that we are weighing heavily on the fact that it is an icon to the village.
That's what I got.
But I think he's also talking about light pollution, right? Okay. So I mean, I can see spotlights, identifying the buildings so you could drive it, but I think he's also talking about.
I'm thinking of parking lot lights that are typically,
Blaring.
elevated
Yeah.
and
We
incredibly
could
bright, so
request-
that the neighboring residents would certainly experience a consequence of
We
that.
could.
so.
There are many different ways to address lighting.
Yep.
We have short notice in getting this prepared, so we chose the quickest one. And we will have, when the students arrive in the morning and faculty arrives in the morning, it will be dark.
Sure.
So we do need to have secure lighting for them. For those few times that we have parent-teacher conferences at night, we'll need lighting in the parking lot.
I'm not saying no lighting.
No.
I'm saying-
But I'm saying,
Yeah.
but there's different ways of doing
Sure.
it. If you drive out on 826, you'll see that by the airport, there's lights that are different than the rest of the expressway because of the planes. So they
Mhm.
provide the same level of lighting as the other lights do, but the lights are more frequent and they're lower. So there's a lot of different ways that we can address lighting.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's not all or nothing. And we will do that.
Very good.
Is there any way that we could potentially see what the lighting plan would be from a landscape perspective as well before council?
Of course. Of course. We will work diligently towards that.
And then I'll make one last comment, and that's, as with a previous applicant, I always encourage imagination, creativity, and problem solving. And so I know that there's the discussion of could you pay for an additional officer or not, what that might look like. I think one of the residents made a valid point, and what happens several years out when that 41.5 no longer, depending on how long-term that agreement for remaining at 41.5, if there's progression, just looking at that, if there might not be an imaginative solution in there somewhere where that extra officer plays into mitigating you perhaps going beyond that 41.5 years later. Just for whoever's in the attorney, the manager, the mayor most likely in this regard, and in terms of an imaginative solution somewhere in there for what's being asked, what could reasonably be accommodated, things like that. So I would just encourage again, imagination, creativity.
I have a question, if I
Yes.
may,
Mhm.
to the attorney. Because we now have the property under contract. We're doing our due diligence, and then we have to close. And we're gonna do our best to try to get the school open in August. If not, we have a backup plan already in place with the university where we're gonna rent classrooms for a couple of months until we get it open. So the next hearing, when it goes to the full council, is not gonna be the last one. We would then have to have another meeting because of the agreement. Is that what I'm hearing?
But by statute, the agreement requires two meetings, two readings. So
Okay.
what I had suggested earlier is that can give the public at least two options, or two opportunities to come and construe or make comments concerning the proposed development agreement. But in addition to that, the council still has the latitude to request a special meeting just to deal with the development agreement.
So if we have the meeting, the special meeting, that would be for the special exceptions, do we know when that would be approximately? I think.
Okay, so this is to answer, I think, everybody's questions. When we get to this point, I give timelines. Because if I don't give timelines, things cannot, it'll take a little longer. So we just got the development agreement literally yesterday in an email. Generally, what's going to happen next is the attorneys, as well as the manager, myself as chair P&Z, will get on a conference call with Juan. You might be in the, and we all discuss the development agreement, and we add comments that were made, we add what we didn't see, we add what's been said, any recommendation, we go back and forth. Well, we go back and forth in the call, and the attorneys go back and forth, making sure that it's get reduced to writing. I'm going to give a timeline now as to when that needs to be done in terms of like the conference call and when that development agreement is on a rough draft so that the entire committee can get. Once that happens and it's in a rough draft format, then we can go ahead and say, okay, it's ready to be able to set up a meeting. What I did for the sanctuary, what I've done for Cavista, I'll do it the same here. If you all were to pass, we already have 2 exceptions that have passed this evening. So they've already asked for a special council meeting because everybody's on a timeline. If the council is available, and I apologize, that's why I've been texting with the clerk. I wanted a confirmation of notice. March 31st is a Tuesday. We can have our first special council meeting. At that, and what we can do beforehand is at 6:30 or 6 o'clock could be the planning and zoning meeting where you have the opportunity to hear the agreement. And then we'll go into the special council meeting for all of the special exceptions to go through. If it's the will of the council to adopt that development agreement into that first reading, we can do that, and then we can schedule a second reading, because the second one is when it has to be noticed. But to answer your question, I'm going to give the timeline. Today is only Tuesday. I would like that conference call between Wednesday or Thursday. I think we can all figure out a time to speak. The attorneys are here, and that by the close of business on Friday, the committee should have a draft of that development agreement, because a draft already exists. We just have to, delete, add, and edit from what I saw and from what the attorney saw and from, so the committee should have it or could have it by the close of business this Friday or Monday. I'm looking at the attorneys for that. We can set up a conference call tomorrow or Thursday. We'll go back and forth in an email when you all's time is doable. And then if Monday morning, that the committee can have the development agreement.
At least on our side, I think it's realistic to get our comments back to them by that time frame. Like, once they get it, they would have to circulate it amongst their working group, so they'd be able to tell us whether or not Mondays works for them.
Our working group is very small and works very efficiently.
I don't know what
It works late into
I don't know
the
who's
night.
involved in that, so I'm looking at the attorney, not you. So, we'll have our comments back by Thursday. Yeah.
Joseph Goldstein, attorney, law offices at 701 Brickell Avenue. So your comments, today's Tuesday, so you'll have your comments by Thursday. We'll turn some draft around with the intent that we'll be meeting or having a conference call with you guys on Monday.
No, I think I thought the conference call was amongst us that she was referring to, but, and you and I would have a call afterwards.
Let me start with yes.
Right.
Okay.
I'll get up, whenever I got to get up, and I'll draft whenever I got to draft.
Right.
And, it really comes down to availability of meeting times and things like that. So we'll turn whatever, and there's some stuff that was
Mentioned tonight, yes,
mentioned
that's
tonight,
not on there,
and
yes.
nuances, and
Yes,
I
yes.
was the guy sitting there going, okay, so I've got to make some changes.
Yeah,
Now,
okay.
some of these may come from you and whatever. And I'm very sensitive that Mr. Kirk is going to want to take, and others may want to take a look at this, and it'll result in tightening language and things like that. I'm fine with that. So your goal, if you turn it around to me, is to get something over back to you by the end of this week, Monday morning kind of thing.
That would be, yes.
Okay.
That's my request, yes. And that way the committee can get it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then you're sending it to the committee the same day as first reading of the item So you're gonna do the committee, and is that what I understood?
Once we have a draft that we believe is, a good draft, the committee should get it. What my recommendation is, if the committee, which is the council, is available on March 31st, I'm willing to recommend a special council meeting that night. And there could be a P and Z meeting right before that. At 6:30 can be a P and Z with just this item on it, and then we go right into the special council meeting, which we've done before.
That's-
But that only happens if the timeline is met. If the timeline is not met, it won't happen. That's the most important thing to remember. Because without the time, because I'm committing to a timeline that they're gonna get it, and then they're gonna get it, and then we can commit to that meeting. So as long as as long as the committee can have a draft by Monday, let's say Monday, because we have the weekend, so we can all work into the weekend. I believe that everything else is due, March 31st would be doable, as long as they're available.
I mean, it's the agreement, it's easy to figure out what's gonna need to be modified.
Yes.
I don't see any real,
I mean, 90% of the agreement is done, well, 100% of, you just have to now add, delete, add, delete, add, delete, and,
there's some of the things that are in there need to be tightened or
Yes,
slightly
yes.
modified. And then there's some other stuff, like, for example.
the covenant of the green space.
And the police officer
And the police
thing,
officer.
as you recall, the meeting that I came to, I came 1 minute late and left about 20 minutes early, so I wasn't aware of that one, but we'll catch up with all
Okay.
these as well.
Okay, perfect.
Madam Mayor?
Councilperson Romeo, yes.
I'm good for the 31st.
Okay,
I am as well.
okay, perfect. And Vice Mayor Nicholson? Are you available the 31st too? Okay. Seeing as you'll be, okay. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, we have a new council person. He's sitting right there. Councilperson-elect Louis Perella is right next to Courtney. He will be sworn in at the March council meeting. So he will be at that meeting, and he'll be at the special council meeting, by the way. Okay. Anyway, with that said, okay, so the timeline is that we'll have an internal conference call like we always do, and then the attorneys will then, he left? Oh, there he is. You all will do whatever it is that you have to do to tighten it up and reduce it to writing so that the entire committee can have it by Monday evening. Fair? All right, they all heard it, All right, we're good, okay. Any other questions for either Juan or the applicant? All your questions were answered? With that said, is there a motion to adopt the special exception of Cristo Rey Miami High School 205 Northeast 87th Street?
I'll motion to adopt.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Roman to adopt and to pass to full council.
I'll
there a
second,
second?
I'll second that motion, Madam Mayor.
A second by Vice Mayor Nickerson. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Any public comments? Hearing none. Ms. Manager, may I have roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilperson Urban.
Thank you. Letters to the residents of 88th Street. Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Yes.
Mayor Kubios.
Yes. Now technically I can say no, right? And it passes.
Well, and the motion passes 4-0. Congratulations.
Yes. Congratulations to all of you this evening. You guys have definitely worked very hard. Thank you to the committee. You guys have definitely.
Courtney, thank you.
All right, Juan, and you too. Thank you, Camila. Thank you, Juan. Juan, this might go down in history as to one of the most productive P&Z meetings.
I think this whole situation
But it
is
only
part of how I
happens
cut my
with,
hair. I think this whole situation is part of why I cut my hair.
Oh, you're so funny. All right, okay, don't leave. We have one more agenda item. It'll be brief. As you all know, back in July, if you can believe that, July of last year, we talked about an architectural pattern book. Tonight, they're just going to show you. You'll get it done. Tonight, they're just going to show us a little what that's going to look like. I would like to get you all's, once we see it, they should email it to all of you so that we all can opine on it, and then hopefully we can get this ball rolling soon. And this is very important. Thank you so much. Thank you. Huh? Oh, yeah, very. Is that from Enterprise Jesus? Yes. Oh, I knew I recognized it. Oh, my God, thank you. Thank you for being here. Come more often.
You can try it on that podium, because that one I know for a fact.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while.
Thank you.
Very nice to see you. Okay. All right, gentlemen, the meeting's not over. We still have one more meeting after. Out of respect to admin and finance, let's get this party on the road. My husband needs some. Where are you going? Oh, yeah, go. All righty, Juan. Bye. Thank you, Ana Maria. You all, thank Cristo Rey. Thank you so much. Thank you. Juan, show's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you mentioned, we've been at this for a while.
Since July.
Since
July of
We
last year.
put it on hold several times, waiting for input. We've never found a good moment, application, et cetera. We are at a point that we have a good draft. There's pieces missing. There's definitely input missing. This is honestly no different than in terms of an undertaking of a charrette, of the charrette that you guys had in 2012. So we would be more than happy to have stakeholders give us input on this. And the more input that we get, the better this report will be. But honestly, even though I am interested in making a quality product for you, I'm more interested in having the stakeholders' input so that there is stakeholder backing this up. Because what's important is not just to have a good document, but a document that is adopted and that the stakeholders are comfortable with it. Because otherwise we'll have to modify it. Now, having said that, this is not a document that is regulatory, this is a guideline. Some people call it a pattern book, some people call it a design guideline. We chose design guidelines because it's, maybe I should be speaking to the stakeholders, sorry. But these are design guidelines that are helpful to establish a line of communication. In many cases, what we found in the last, I don't even remember, 5 years that we're working at El Portal, is that there seems to be a miscommunication, and not because it's not intentional, is because architecture and the way that a village is put together, it's a little subjective, right? So do you like this color? Do you not like this color? So these are guidelines that are going to be proposed to be adopted in order to establish that line of communication and be able to speak with the same language, right? So what we've done, and I'll show you a few of the pages that we're working on. You can see the big draft there. So there's nothing set in stone for now, on top of the fact that this will not be regulatory. But a little bit of an overview of this. It is essentially taking the information that we've gathered from the comprehensive plan, taking information that we've gathered by driving and walking a lot of most, right? About 90% probably, to be safe. I think it's more like 100% of your village streets, and looking at the different buildings that you have. Now I'm gonna skip a little bit and show you a map, if I can, if this lets me. I'm gonna show you a map real quick of the village. We should put this in the front, guys. So this is a village, a map of the village. And you can see that we've accounted for all the buildings that you have in El Portal. In fact, not only have we accounted for them, but we've also identified the year of construction. What we've noticed is that more than 50% of your buildings are pre-1950s. And the pre-1950s, and why is that important? It's important because buildings back then, and I'll get to the real reason, but buildings back then were built typically a little smaller. Any of you live in a building pre-1950s? How big are your closets? Right? Right? Tiny, right? I live in a 1927, and there's a closet that I can't even fit a suitcase. The point being is not necessarily the size of the building, but what it left unbuilt. And that's part of the reason why El Portal is so green. It's because a lot of the buildings are pre-1950s, even 60s. These ranch houses that are a little bit squatter and a little bit shorter in terms of height, but fatter, they still leave quite a bit of room for landscape. This is something that we are seeing throughout Miami-Dade, where people are building larger and bigger homes and less greenery, which is counter in reality to the sense of El Portal, which is very green. So anyway, this was just to show you part of the reason why we've picked the best examples that we felt are conducive or that result in the type of architecture that is what we feel is El Portal. Now, again, I'll go back. This is subjective, right? So we need your input. The ones that we picked are the ones that we love, that we felt are very indicative of the type of architecture that you have here. We're welcome to see others that you might think are appropriate and characteristic of the village. Now, obviously, we're not going to draw every single one of them, but we've picked several from El Portal, and these are local examples. We have, starting from the arts and crafts that we have on 320 Northeast 88th. You see the picture below. You see the drawing above. We've identified what is characteristic of this style. In this case, they're typically gabled. They're typically stucco. So this is the arts and crafts, and they typically have a porch in front. You also have your Mediterranean Revival. This one's in Northeast 90th. We also have a Tudor Revival, which is a very unique building. There's not that many around. We have the Tudor Village, I think, on Lejeune in Coral Gables, and that's the largest concentration of Tudor architecture that we have. But we have one here, and it's actually quite beautiful. We've also got the Mission style, which is basically the Spanish style, some people call it. But all of these are indicative of a type of architecture that was being built and that that makes up most of El Portal. Okay? Now, if your building is not portrayed here, it's totally understandable. We're talking about more than 50%, but part of the village is not being portrayed here. We are looking at the characteristics that make this good architecture. So we're showing these as examples. We're less interested in defining a style of architecture that must come to El Portal, but we are what we are proposing is that, and you will see as part of the massing, also composition, window placement, facade composition, etc. What we want to make sure is that it doesn't matter what style you build, but whatever style you pick, do it right. Right? Modern architecture has its way of dealing with openings. Sorry?
Like the wall on 87?
So the wall on 87, I'm not going to go into specifics, but that was one application that, in speaking with the council, it was concerning, and it was one of the reasons why this was put in motion. Because we want to make sure that there is eyes on the street, that there is openings, that there is, again, that whatever style you pick is done right, that you become a good neighbor, and that your building becomes a good neighbor. And that's really the intent of these guidelines. Again, types of opening, we're not, this is not historic preservation. We're not identifying one and you must buy this one, right? We are giving different options. And of course, depending on the style that you pick for your building, some details or elements of that architecture are better suited than others. Again, I'll say it one more time because I think this is important. This is not a requirement. This is a guideline that allows the council to be educated about the merits of an application, okay? again, you mentioned the wall. I wasn't going to mention specific examples, but in that case, we would have looked at, which we will include as part of this, void to solid ratio, which is something that is used in architecture and in planning, in zoning even, very often, and that prescribes the amount of openings that you need as a percentage of the total facade, right? So this is part of the reason for these guidelines. You know, types of roofs, porches, how to locate porches. As you can see, you know, there's many ways to locate a porch, and I'm sorry this is a little small. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. If I do this, better? So there's many ways of doing porches, again, and these are some of the examples. Different styles will yield different porches, different roofs, sometimes flat, sometimes pitched. Materials, that's also something that we inherited from the previous code. Colors, that's something that we still have to discuss. The village went through an archaeological exercise and found a palette.
The palette is in your hands.
So even though the palette is in our hands, and you're right, is it? Did we get it?
Did you guys pick it up? If you have it, we'll give it to you before you leave today.
This is, by the way, a good so we don't have it yet.
Okay, so
Just for the
it's right
record,
there
we don't
waiting
have
for you. We're going to make sure you give it to you before you leave.
But we will look at what was marked as a T, and we still need to figure out what that means.
Terminated. Colors were terrible.
I thought it was terrific.
There was like tea on a lime color and tea on I don't know what, right?
Yeah, on a fuchsia.
Yeah.
So we will review that, but as we are doing this, this is a perfect opportunity to also review those colors, and since we're putting this out to the stakeholders, to weigh on it and figure out if those are the colors that are appropriate. You know, I always give the example of Coral Gables. Coral Gables has its pros and its cons, and there's some things about Coral Gables that are just very difficult to deal with, and others that have made it, you know, the values of the homes have really been improved because of some things that they do. So again, I'm putting that example there because they are prescriptive. It's not that we have to be like them, but we need to be cognizant that however restrictive we are, there is a value related to that, right? So this is not going to be simply our decision. It's going to be through the council and through your opinion, but that opinion is necessary in order to complete this task. And other than that, we've also included other things which we felt that in most cases this is not included in a pattern book, but we felt that it was important because these are things that we deal with every time we have an application. Driveways, driveway materials, how to put a driveway, what options do you have? We've also taken the liberty to try and create a 2020, or I guess a 21st century approach to materials, including the fact that there's a flooding problem. So in terms of picking materials for surfaces, permeable surfaces will impact or will percolate the water faster, potentially protecting your homes. So this pattern book hopefully will be a good guideline to follow, not just for the aesthetics of your buildings, but also in terms of guiding the council for environmental decisions. We've given we're going to give examples on how to handle the horseshoe driveway, the straight driveway, how to put landscape, what kind of shrubbery. We've even gone as far as to propose some solutions for rain gardens. Again, we're in a flood zone, so every little help. If everybody in their property had a rain garden, which are beautiful by the way, you know, you could probably be a lot more resilient. Again, not a requirement, but you know, this is a piece of information that I would have liked to have if I was doing my property. And finally, landscape. This is very important too. We've looked at native planting. Surprisingly, there's more than anybody really expects. And I love plants, and I love native plants. And honestly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 pages of native planting. which is more than I expected. So thank you, Camila, for being thorough. And we've used our landscape architects to look into that. And then how to place them within the lot, in addition to privacy fences and fences, which are also an issue that we've had to deal with quite often. So this will give you an example, not just by the name, what's a picket fence? You know, we actually do get that question a lot. What does a picket fence look like? So we have to send them emails. This will be a document that, you know, we can just refer people to and make everybody's life a lot easier. And finally, some of the examples that we've seen, Sherwood Forest is has a wealth of architecture there. It's another project, the preservation of that wealth of architecture that we have there. But you know, we have not just in Sherwood Forest, we have in other places too. You know, there's Mediterranean Revival in this page, cottages. We have bungalows. We have from the 1930s. We have others that we haven't even identified the style because it's a mix, and that's part of the update that we need to do. And we'll add to that palette of work that we've looked at. All in all, work in progress, so be gentle with us. But that is, in essence, what we're looking at. And by the way, if you look at this facade composition, you will see that we're also including a modern version of a house. It's important to note, for instance, something that we see a lot, the proper modern, if you look at a textbook, it has certain proportions, it has certain openings, it has certain character, and it has rules too. Just because it's modern doesn't mean that you can do anything. So again, not a regulation, but a guideline, and we can refer more of the how to build your home right to other, you probably have a bibliography that we will add here, right, for people to refer to for future construction. We will leave this with you. Again, please be gentle, as you always are, of course. And hopefully we can get this moving fast, because I know that there's applications, and every time that we have an application, it's a little painful not to have the material to be able to explain to the applicant what it is that the village is looking for. I don't know, Madam Mayor, if you'd recommend to do a town hall at one point. If you think if you deem it appropriate, we could put this together with a comprehensive plan town hall, so we can kill two birds with one stone. This could also be referred to as part of the comp plan. So there's layers of planning documentation that can help strengthen this and make it more usable. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Just a couple of things. So yes, most definitely, I think we'll do a community workshop. We'll workshop the pattern book, and we'll workshop the comp plan. Since planning and zoning is meeting every month, I will shoot out some dates to the committee and to you all to see if availability to have a workshop. And then we'll put it out to the residents. I mean, as I was thinking about the pattern book, you know, I'd like to have this passed by September, if that's aggressive, because we actually have a few homes that want to be built, and application was denied a few months ago. I think it's a Northeast 88th Street for new development. Also, we've been getting calls about the North Miami lots that are vacant. So and one of the reasons that this came up as sort of necessary was because of the house on 87th Street and how that turned out. So this is necessary, and it's just part of the culture in Alberta. So I'm excited. I think the committee is as well pretty excited about it. Before I ask them for any questions, just two things that I didn't see in the pattern book: Northeast 2nd Avenue and the Little Farm. So perhaps, probably won't have that but Northeast 2nd Avenue is different, they're zoned different. So what does those businesses look like? We already know what the potential in terms of the max capacity that they can be, right? So we need to take a look what the design, what the colors would be, if different. That's the only thing I didn't see on there. And then, of course, the future development of Little Farm, which I guarantee you with what just transpired this evening, and with the meeting that's coming up, and if it continues to progress, they might move a little quicker. So I think it's important to maybe take a look at a pattern book for, buildings or apartment buildings or something like that, because we talked about that for the Cavista, but it's a little late for that.
You're absolutely right. We have not addressed larger scale buildings. And we probably should in a different way. I think that larger buildings require a little bit more scrutiny from our part. So, but this would be helpful. And the Little Farm is. Let me think about that. I think that we've addressed small single-family dwelling units because those are the most personal. And those are the ones that probably require more, communication, facilitation with the applicant. Larger buildings typically have an architect, and we can, not that single family doesn't, but with larger projects, typically there's more of a back and forth between the architects and us. But part of this document would help to aid to that communication too. So you're right. It's just a little harder to do large buildings, right? And it's sort of like on a case by, I'm thinking the Cavista, for example, it's on a case by case basis. But there should be
Something, at least, especially for Northeast Second Avenue. Northeast Second Avenue has about, on the west side, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 places that are set back, and they look somewhat the same. They're like 2 stories. So, I mean, they literally could probably all build out.
Yeah. So each of your blocks is roughly 300 feet in length, frontage, and you have a total of 3,200 linear feet of retail. So we probably need to put together a few options for 300 linear feet of frontage with retail on the ground level, and probably 2 options, one with office above and one with residential above.
I mean, we got a little lucky with the cottages because they're cute, but if you take a look, you don't think they're cute?
No,
They're
I'm
cute.
just saying,
Oh, but if you take a look at, there's a property for sale. I don't know if it's still for sale, and it's a I think it's a multi-family. I think a hotel wanted to go in there or something like that. That may have reached out to you, and then it's the property right across from my school. That it's just a matter of time before somebody buys that whole lot. And if somebody wants to put a duplex or a quadruplex or whatever it's called, what is that going to look like? Like, so it's something to think about.
The other option for the committee to consider is that this may not be required. At the same time, there are elements of here that we could require. I mean, that would be adopted as part of the zoning. I think there are things that are more important than others, right? I don't think that we have to require specific type of windows, for instance. But there's other elements of architecture that, just again, I'll use the same example of Coral Gables. Even Miami Shores, I believe it has more stringent zoning with regards to volume and facade balance that I've seen. So again, this is super first draft, but we can consider going both routes, or at least having part of it required and part of it as a guideline. But you're right, we will look at larger volumes.
Okay.
That's a good comment.
And I'll send out some dates for a community workshop for the stakeholders.
If we can put it together with the comprehensive plan,
Okay.
it'll save us time and the stakeholders' time as well.
Yep. Does the committee have any questions for Juan? No? Councilperson Aaron?
Looks great. Can you email it to us? Thank you.
Any comments from the community? Close the committee to public comments.
Courtney Kirk, 265 Northeast 87th. I'm a little confused as to the purpose of this. Is this going to be, I want to build a new building, I have to meet some of this? Or is this, hey, if you're thinking about something that might be nice in El Portal, that's fine, but I'm gonna go and build a box that's on 87th anyway because it meets the zoning requirements, et cetera. I need a little understanding, if you could.
Right, the enforceable part is the zoning, right? The zoning requires a certain volume, there's max and minimums. This is a guideline. This is a how to get it right from an architectural standpoint. Now, it's based on architectural theory and based on proportion and scale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's non-enforceable, it's a guideline. So this is an attempt, or this is a document to allow proper communication, especially for the council, in order to know how to communicate with an applicant, and also for us, actually. I'll give you the example for, and I don't want to keep on using the example of the blank wall, but the two that were denied, for instance, there was essentially a problem with balance and proportion in those buildings. Okay.
Did they meet all of the zoning requirements?
They did.
Then how can it be rejected if it meets the actual requirements?
Because it's up to the council to approve new construction, and it's also based on a requirement to also comply with a comprehensive plan, which says that it needs to be compatible with the surrounding structures, right? From an aesthetic, and it's very loose, right? So the problem is that currently the comprehensive plan, that requirement is extremely loose, and so there's bound to be an argument between the applicant and us, or the applicant and the council, or the applicant with a neighbor, about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, what fits, what doesn't fit. This gives you, I guess, it's a lexicon of language that allows you to communicate those things that may seem right or wrong. And again, I can't stress this enough. In many ways, architecture is subjective, but architectural styles follow certain norms and rules. Now, when you get a modern house with a Mediterranean window, it'll look odd. And sometimes what we found is that stakeholders can't really point out. I gave you a very dumb example of the Mediterranean window, which you can probably point out, but there are things typically which relate to either scale or proportion that you won't be able to quite figure it out. These guidelines hopefully allow you to point at what feels wrong, and hence allows us to communicate with the applicant, and also the council to communicate with the applicant how to improve that facade for better compatibility. Does that make sense?
So it's not enforceable, it is simply so that everybody's speaking the same language?
Yes, it won't be, I mean, this as it's presented today, it's not enforceable. If there are things that you as stakeholders and committee and council feel strongly about, hey, we want only, tile roofs, right? So that we will take and then we will put in the zoning. But the pattern book, or as we are calling it, the design guideline, it's a guideline. So it's a document to assist communication for future construction or even additions.
Okay, thank you. To the committee, if this looks like it's a lot of work, I would hate to say we're not going to release anything until you do the Northeast Second, the Little Farm, and this, so perhaps the committee wants to prioritize a section to get it completed rather than doing something that may stretch for months and years and not have an actionable item. Just a suggestion.
Oh, no, the community workshop, we'll come up with a date by the end of the week, and that's gonna be on this. I just brought up Northeast Second and Little Farm because I want the wheels to start spinning, to know that's something that they probably should add on to this, because things will come transpire on Northeast Second Avenue.
Thank you.
But we're not gonna wait for that, because I'm pushing for a September deadline.
And then if I could just add one point.
Councilperson Erwin.
So just to add a point, one of the applicants that we denied essentially was frustrated that we did not have even just a guideline, regardless of enforceability or not. It's not that they were wanting to ram their design, down our throats or anything. They really were looking for a guideline so that they wouldn't be wasting their time in presenting a design that the committee and ultimately the council did not feel was appropriate for exactly as he's saying, being compatible with the surrounding architecture and designs.
As the code says, it's got to be harmonious to the buildings around them. But you brought up a good point. Some things we may have to put as a requirement, but okay. Any other questions for Juan? All right, thank you, Juan. Thank you, Camila. And thank you, Camila, number 2. I don't know your name. Sorry, I apologize. Sorry. Christina. C, you see? C.
Christina is our secret weapon. So we will circulate this to the council through the clerk, and then the committee will decide whether or not to put this out to the public. When do you want to put this to the public?
I'd like to do a community workshop. I think once you feel ready, that the draft is ready to be workshopped, we can come up with a date to workshop it.
Okay.
Okay?
Sooner rather than later.
Well,
if
you
wanna
know
lay
me,
this out,
100%. We have a September deadline. It's going to be on the September council meeting agenda.
Okay. Sounds
Okay?
good. Thank
Along
you.
with the budget. We don't meet in July. I mean, August. Okie dokie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We have another meeting coming up. So with that said, any other discussion? Hearing none. Good and welfare? All right. Hearing none, may I get a motion to adjourn the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, there's a motion to adjourn.
I will
Is there
second the motion. to
Second by
adjourn.
Councilperson Urban. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the P and Z adjourns at 9:02 p.m. Thank you. Thank you all. Y'all did a great job. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you. Jesus, nice to see you.